Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Oxford University Press, I welcome you to OUP South Asia Conclave 2019. This is a special moment for all of us who have, over the years, collectively nurtured the spirit and substance of this idea. And now, as we celebrate the third edition of the Conclave, it is pertinent to note that this space has steadily emerged as a major platform to deliberate over significant issues pertaining to South Asia. What is South Asia? Is it a civilizational entity? Is it an overlapping network of multiple constructions, emotions, and practices? Could we consider this to be an analytical category? And if it is a construction, what can be identified as the contestations? And perhaps some among us would like to dismiss borders, nations, and all related nomenclature as mere imagined abstractions. These questions aside, for years now, South Asia has been one of the fastest growing regions in the world and is home to astounding cultural diversity. However, rapid economic growth has been accompanied by income inequalities, education and health inequities, environmental degradation, macroeconomic imbalances, even macroeconomic crisis in some cases, and generally uneven public service delivery to the citizens. Today, we are confronted by an array of political challenges whose nuances and long-standing ramifications still remain inadequately addressed. It is with this idea that we conceptualize the Conclave as a space to bring together some of the finest minds to deliberate over our shared futures. In fact, in our post-truth Anthropocene, which is dominated by flatness of the screens, flatness of text, and flatness of narratives, the Conclave becomes even more critical a gathering where we all come together in flesh and warmth to talk, to listen, and to reflect. I would now like to welcome Niko Pfund, Global Publisher of Academic Division of the Press, to deliver the welcome note. Over to you, Niko.
Well, good morning, everyone. I have been told that I am under strict orders to not go over 7 minutes, so I will be speaking very quickly. And I first wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming. It's a real tribute to this gathering that we have as many folks in the room at this hour. So thank you very much for that. And also, since this might be my only opportunity to thank all the people who've been involved in arranging today, I wanted to thank all the speakers, the panelists, and my colleagues at Oxford. So during a past conclave, I spoke a bit about a book that we had published a few years ago called The Death of Expertise, the campaign against established knowledge and why it matters. At a time when Trump had just been elected, when Brexit was in its early post-plebiscite throes, seems a rather innocent age now by comparison to what's going on now, and when accusations of fake news and the term mainstream media had not yet become the culturally ensconced slur that it has now, the book struck a chord, selling tens of thousands of copies. I think it's been translated into about 13 languages so far, most recently Vietnamese. And the animating impetus behind the book, which was that expertise, that empiricism, that data, that factual knowledge must triumph and win out over opinion and partisanship and emotion. Also informs a major undertaking of Oxford University Press's, the Oxford Research Encyclopedias. And I'm going to tell you, just spend a few minutes telling you about this because I think it's actually a very exciting project and there is some detail, additional detail in your packets about it. I want to tell you about this because it involves a massive multi-year investment by the press. It involves over 11,000 expert authors, over 5,000 peer reviewers, and I want to do so not as some sort of a vulgar product plug, since that's decidedly not the point of the conversation today, but as an affirmation of the values and the principles that inform our work, yours as scholars, as journalists, and ours in turn as publishers. It seems to me increasingly like all of us are playing defense a great deal these days with respect to forces that don't share the same values that we do and the same principles. And so I thought you might find it cheering to hear a bit of affirmative news about this forward-looking initiative that is in fact rooted in many of these values. So the Oxford Research Encyclopedias, what are they? In effect, it is an attempt to create a vetted Wikipedia for all of our core disciplines. It's really a quite simple idea. They are continuously updated encyclopedias in every field in which OUP is a significant publisher, which is most of the major fields in the academy, primarily in social sciences and humanities. They feature in-depth, long-form entries of about 10,000 words, the idea being that you can read them in about half an hour. And the aim is to provide researchers, students, scholars with really everything they need to know in that period. We're currently signing up about 200 entries every month, and the numbers and scale of the initiative, as per the 11,000 writers and the peer reviewers, is really quite staggering. We currently have about 10 advisory board members at universities here in India, and understandably there are dozens of authors in India contributing to the enterprise overall. So why did we undertake this? Why spend all this money on reference at a time when most publishers are running as fast away from reference as they possibly can? It's because we feel that basic research faces significant challenges these days due to the staggering proliferation of information and misinformation online. High-quality reference works which summarize research on unfamiliar topics can help to address this challenge, and we think that OUP is perfectly situated to provide that. In fact, students, when we talk to them, we've done a lot of market research around this, they tell us that as much of research, of reference rather, has migrated out of libraries, they feel at sea. They don't really have the same kind of guidance that they did. They're not the same signifiers as existed in a print world. And so in some ways, paradoxically, this information-rich environment has in fact made it harder to find trustworthy information. I think all of us have first-hand experience with this, where you Google something or you look something up and you get a welter of information, not very much of it very useful. So, and we also know that there are many ideologically motivated factions that are willfully trying to implant information that actually is incorrect and deliberately so. So this was created as an attempt to try to counter that. So how is it going so far? Well, so far it's actually been quite positive. Traffic to the site is tremendous. We've seen steady growth every year. Over the 3 years that we've been doing this, there have been 17 million article views. That is really a pretty staggering number. Presently, we're trending at over 1 million views a month. We saw about 120% increase in views this year over last, and approximately 150,000 of those views came from India last year. So we're also being very attentive to the fact that not everybody has resources to purchase content online, so approximately 25% of the materials that we're putting on the site are in front of the paywall. So it's a resource really for everyone. And it's been very interesting to see what people are looking at, right? This is actually one of the most interesting aspects of the site, is that you can get feedback as to what people are most interested in. And I thought I'd just mention that to you since it's a filter of sorts, or a prism onto what people are concerned about. Immigration and crime, there's of course been a lot of discussion in the US about that. The pros and cons of GMO farming is another one. Prejudice, racism, and discrimination, gender bias and sexism in language, verbal communication styles and culture, and foreign aid as a foreign policy tool. So you can discern some of the themes there. It's essentially controversial topics where other online resources might be perceived as somehow biased or untrustworthy. Underrepresented perspectives are also quite prominent in terms of stories that aren't being told. And then, unsurprisingly, educational research topics that are among the more conventional ones in the academy. So in this way, what we're hoping to do at Oxford is work with the scholarly community to try to combat misinformation online and create these genuinely reliable resources. And I think that it's really just one way in which the academic community and the publishing community in OUP are joining forces. And it is informed really by the very same spirit that brings us all together in this room today. So that said, I am now going to turn it over to Professor Varshney, who is one of the primary architects of this gathering, to talk a little bit more about how the day is going to proceed and go from there. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you during the course of the day.
Thank you, Niko. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Ashutosh Varshney, with whom we share a rather special bond. He brings method to all our madness. Saul Godman, a professor of international studies and social sciences, and professor of political science at Brown University, Professor Varshney also directs the Center for Contemporary South Asia. Previously, he taught at Harvard and the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. He is also a contributing editor and columnist for the Indian Express. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shoaib. Oxford University Press has given me the responsibility of picking 5 books on South Asia each year that Oxford University Press either published in the preceding year or has accepted for publication. And it's been a wonderful pleasure, actually, to curate the event around the 5 books that from Oxford worldwide, not simply Oxford, New York, for which I edit the Modern South Asia series, but Oxford, India, and I was told last night that Oxford, UK also should be in my site next year, from next year onwards. So what's the purpose of these annual conclaves? The primary purpose is to bring new research, new ideas in the larger public sphere, the Habermasian public sphere, if you will. Not confining ourselves to fellow academics, but also bringing to this gathering everyone interested in the current of ideas that we can find and who can contribute to the evolving discussion. So which 5 books have I chosen this year? The first one is on Manu Gandhi. This is the 150th anniversary of Gandhi's year of birth, 1869. And it deals with Manu Gandhi, as you know, as many of you know, joined Gandhi's ashram at 16 years of age and accompanied him till his death on 30th January 1948. She was Gandhi's nephew's daughter, and her diaries have not been examined yet, and Tridib Surud is the first scholar to take a systematic look at those diaries and will tell us what those diaries reveal. The first volume is coming out soon, the second will be out perhaps next year. Tridib will tell us. The second book I've chosen is Line on Fire by Happyman Jacob of JNU. It deals with clashes between India and Pakistan on the border, Kashmir border, especially. And its novelty stems from the fact that it's perhaps the only account we have based on the narratives of military officers on both sides, which is remarkably unique, which has not happened. The narratives from both sides have not been collected to analyze the problem of ceasefire violations. The third book I have picked is Christine Fair's In Their Own Words, the first account we know, book-length account we know, of Lashkar-e-Taiba, and it, among other things, goes into the doctrinal anchorage, the doctrines that generate the activities of Lashkar-e-Taiba, normally known as LET. LET is... it was not known until Christine brought this to our attention. It was not known that it does not attack any groups inside Pakistan, whereas most militant organizations of Pakistan attack both inside and outside. It attacks only groups outside Pakistan. Why is that so? And what relationship in the process it has developed with the so-called deep state of Pakistan, the army in particular, is the object of an investigation. And as I said, the first book-length treatment of a very important organization for international security, for South Asian security. The fourth book is on gendered violence by Poulomi Chaudhary, and it deals with something that many of us have spent a good deal of time, even people like me who have not researched gendered violence have spent a great deal of time thinking about it. And her focus is on the relative incapacity of the state to deal with gender violence, and in the presence of that, in the absence of that capacity, how survivors of violence sometimes, oftentimes, sometimes, and take law into their own hands and pursue extrajudicial justice. That's how she has looked into this problem, and it's a new angle on gender violence. The final book I've chosen is Jennifer Bissell's Clients and Constituents. It deals with the phenomenon of democratic accountability called constituency service, which has been discussed a lot in Western democracies, but has not been discussed in the studies of Indian democracy, certainly not at any length. It is often believed, both in academic and larger political circles, that elected politicians in India only respond, or primarily respond, generally the argument is only respond to those citizens which are from their caste or their religion. So the accountability in Indian democracy, political accountability, is to castes and religions, not to citizens per se. Jennifer shows that a good deal of activity of elected politicians is actually about all constituents, regardless of caste and religion. That caste and religion do not play a role, they do, but there is this side of democratic accountability which must be taken note of and analyzed. So these are the 5 books. Each panel gets 75 minutes, led by a very carefully picked moderator. 15 minutes will be assigned to the book author to present their arguments, and 10 minutes each to the 3 commentators that I have picked, and then each panel will end with an open discussion of about 20 minutes when comments from the floor are very welcome and will be directed by the moderator. So welcome to the 3rd edition. We start in a moment our substantive discussion, and we'll go on till 5:30, and we'll break for lunch at 1:30. Thank you all for coming.